Hello, everyone. My name is Olivia Jacquemart. I am a QA and trainer for ViaQuest Psychiatric and Behavioral Solutions. And today we are going to be going over de-escalation. So first and foremost, we need to understand what are our objectives with this training. So first, we need to gain a better understanding and knowledge of human behavior responses. We would like to become knowledgeable of interventions that assist with crisis de-escalation, understand the role of relationships and boundary setting with clients to better assist with crisis de-escalation. And we also need to know techniques and tips for clinician self-care when dealing with crisis often. So first and foremost, we just have a quick video here that I will go ahead and play and see you guys in just one moment.
It's just, there's all this pressure, you know? And sometimes it feels like it's right up on me and I can just feel it, like literally feel it in my head, and it's relentless. And I don't know if it's going to stop. I mean, that's the thing that scares me the most, is that I don't know if it's ever going to stop.
Yeah. Well, you do have a nail in your head.
It is not about the nail.
Are you sure? Because, I mean, I'll bet if we got that out of there...
Stop trying to fix it.
No, I'm not trying to fix it. I'm just pointing out that maybe the nail is causing...
You always do this. You always try to fix things when what I really need is for you to just listen.
Yeah, see, I don't think that is what you need. I think what you need is to get the nail
See,
out.
you're not even listening now.
Okay, fine. I will listen. Fine.
It's just, sometimes it's like there's this achy, I don't know what it is. And I'm not sleeping very well at all. And all my sweaters are snagged. I mean, all of them.
Yeah, that sounds really hard.
It is. Thank you. Ow!
Oh, come on. Ow. If you would just...
Don't...
Try to see things my way. Do I have to keep...
So that's just a funny little video. But what was the point? You know, what is the actual point of the video? Just taking directly from it, you know, it's not about the nail. So everything is all about how we are listening. We are providing that active listening for our veterans, for our individuals, and they are just feeling heard and cared for. So before we can actually get into any type of de-escalation, we should first talk about escalation itself. So this diagram demonstrates the typical process of the anger arousal cycle, and understanding this process will help us to better understand how to apply effective interventions and hopefully de-escalate our patients before they are entering the crisis stage. So number one there is just the trigger phrase. So this is when an event causes us to feel threatened at some level and our physiological system prepares to meet that threat. And then the escalation phase is when our body prepares for a crisis. It has the increased respiration, so that rapid breathing. There's an increased heart rate, the raised blood pressure. Muscles tend to tense for action. This is when our voice may become louder or an altered pitch. Our eyes change shape and our pupils enlarge. All of that falls under the escalation phase. And then in the crisis phase, so this is when our survival instincts start to step in. This is the fight or flight. What's also important to note here is that this could also be freeze. So there's a fight, flight, or even freeze response happening. This is when our body is prepared to take action. Unfortunately, during this crisis phase, during our peak escalation, the quality of judgment that we may be benefiting from is not quite there. So our decision making and our cognition is drastically diminished. And then we have the recovery phase. So this takes place after some action has resulted during the crisis phase, and the body starts to recover from the extreme stress and that expenditure of energy. So the adrenaline is starting to leave our body, and quality of judgment and that decision making starts to return gradually. And then the very last phase there is the post crisis depression phase. It is the point when the body enters a short period and where the heart rate actually slips below normal. So then the body can regain its balance. So awareness and energy return to allow us to assess what just happened. And then first, we need to understand that all behavior is a form of communication. So this is true across the lifespan and across different species. Think of a time when, a partner, a family member, a friend has done something to make you mad. You may react and behave by giving them the silent treatment. You're not actually verbally communicating anything, but your behavior is absolutely showing the people around you that something has upset you. And then additionally, behavior is a way to address unmet needs. So everyone has a need to feel safe and a need to feel in control of their own life. So if those things aren't happening, they may be trying to act out or maybe trying to behave in a way to get that feeling back. So that can be really scary for someone who isn't getting their needs met. So then we'll look at the basics of behavior modification. So first, there are the triggers or the event that occurs prompting the behavior response, and that trigger leads to the behavior. Behaviors are based on our belief systems. So we are trying to focus on problem behaviors in addition to the underlying beliefs that prompted this behavioral response. And then following each behavior comes some kind of consequence, the event that occurs after the response. And then lastly, depending on how the consequence benefits or disadvantages that person, we face the reinforcements. So if the behavior produces the desired outcome, it is more likely the behavior will occur again in the future. So the example I like to give a lot with this is think about a child who's throwing a tantrum. They want ice cream for dinner. If their tantrum gets them ice cream for dinner, they are more likely to throw tantrums again when they want that to happen again in the future. So if they want ice cream for dinner the next day, they're more likely to throw a tantrum again because it's got them what they wanted in the past. So next we'll look at controlling triggers. So there would be no reason to de-escalate someone if they couldn't get escalated in the first place. So that trigger phase is really what we want to control first and foremost. So triggers are very subjective person to person, and all of these can be triggers for someone. So first, we are looking at environmental triggers. So this could be loud noises, it could be cleanliness, it could be the weather, the temperature, it could be just personal space. How much personal space do they have at that time? It could also be what's happening in the media, especially when we are looking with our clients and with our veterans. There's a lot of war happening in other parts of the world right now, and that could absolutely trigger them and looking at what they may have experienced in the past. And then we have interactions. So these are our own interactions with our clients. So these are the things such as our tone of voice. It could be our verbal or nonverbal body language. What are our cues? It could be ignoring our clients or teasing them, could be confronting them regarding something. So just notice how you and others are impacting the residents in the surrounding environment. And then we have patient-specific triggers. So this could include the family contact, physical or mental health, and then our trauma history. So in regards to trauma history, we never know what sounds, sights, smells, interactions, anything might trigger a trauma reaction from our clients. So building that rapport and having that interaction and connection with our clients is very important, and being able to control our patient-specific triggers. And then we also just want to look at ourselves. So what are your triggers? Are there specific behaviors or specific individuals that may increase your heart rate, may cause you to escalate? And then how do you respond to others in a crisis? What's your tone of voice? What are your nonverbal or emotional responses? And then how do you work with those around you? So knowing when to tag team, if you know that this specific individual does not work well with you taking over in a crisis, get another staff member, ask someone else to assist you. That is perfectly fine. If you are someone who does not lead well in crisis situations, that is perfectly okay to grab another staff member and just follow directions instead. So knowing your communication and knowing your strengths can really assist in being able to effectively de-escalate and make sure that we ensure that client safety. So we just have a quick stress reduction video here. This is all about box breathing. So box breathing is a good way to calm yourself down before approaching a person who is escalated. And it's something that you can teach to the residents or veterans that you work with. So I will go ahead and play this now.
There are times when we all experience feelings of stress or anxiety. In these moments, you can use your breath to help calm those feelings. Box breathing is a simple relaxation technique that can help you reset your breath and return to its normal rhythm. You can do it anywhere, anytime. Box breathing can help reduce stress and improve mood. It can also help with controlling and managing emotions. It's very easy to learn. Imagine breathing around a box. Inhale as you visualize going up one side of the box, gradually filling your lungs with air. When you reach the top, hold your breath for 1 to 5 seconds as you picture going across the top of the box. Exhale gradually as you imagine traveling down the other side of the box. Pause again for 1 to 5 seconds as you go along the bottom of the box. Then repeat. This can be done 7 to 10 times in a row, focusing on the breath. If you can do it sitting down with your feet grounded, that will help too. But really, it can be done anywhere. Box breathing has physiological and psychological benefits. Physiologically, it regulates breath, increases oxygen to the lungs, and can help reduce blood pressure and lower heart rate. Box breathing can help psychologically by providing focus to your breath and removing attention from the things that are causing feelings of stress and anxiety. The repetition of box breathing can also help reduce stress. So, in moments when feelings of stress and anxiety are overwhelming, remember box breathing and the power of your breath as a simple way to relax and breathe a bit easier.
So that is just a really awesome video showing you what box breathing is, and how it can benefit us and our individuals. So now we'll actually get into the core principles of de-escalation. So firstly, we want to focus on staying in the moment, meaning the moment surrounding the peak escalation of a person in crisis. What is leading up to that? Why are they in crisis? And then next, providers should focus on the use of empathy, which we will absolutely get into in a little bit. And we also want to address the behavior, not the individual. And then escalation typically, excuse me, typically occurs due to an individual's belief about a situation or activating event, not the event itself. So here is just our quick video. This is from a researcher, Brene Brown. She is absolutely amazing at describing empathy versus sympathy and why it's really important that we use empathy.
So what is empathy, and why is it very different than sympathy? Empathy fuels connection. Sympathy drives disconnection. Empathy, it's very interesting. Teresa Wiseman is a nursing scholar who studied professions, very diverse professions where empathy is relevant, and came up with 4 qualities of empathy. Perspective taking, the ability to take the perspective of another person or recognize their perspective as their truth. Staying out of judgment, not easy when you enjoy it as much as most of us do. Recognizing emotion in other people and then communicating that. Empathy is feeling with people. And to me, I always think of empathy as this kind of sacred space when someone's kind of in a deep hole and they shout out from the bottom and they say, I'm stuck, it's dark, I'm overwhelmed. And then we look and we say, hey, you climb down. I know what it's like down here, and you're not alone. Sympathy is, ooh, it's bad, no. You want a sandwich? Empathy is a choice, and it's a vulnerable choice, because in order to connect with you, I have to connect with something in myself that knows that feeling. Rarely, if ever, does an empathic response begin with at least. Yeah. And we do it all the time. Because you know what? Someone just shared something with us that's incredibly painful, and we're trying to silver lining it. I don't think that's a verb, but I'm using it as one. We're trying to put the silver lining around it. So, I had a miscarriage. Oh, at least you know you can get pregnant. I think my marriage is falling apart. At least you have a marriage. John's getting kicked out of school. At least Sarah is an A student. But one of the things we do sometimes in the face of very difficult conversations is we try to make things better. If I share something with you that's very difficult, I'd rather you say, I don't even know what to say right now, I'm just so glad you told me. Because the truth is, rarely can a response make something better. What makes something better is connection.
I just love that video. I think it really portrays like why and how important it is to have that connection. And like Brene Brown mentioned, it is absolutely a choice and it is absolutely a skill that we have to practice, but it is one of the most important ones that we can learn as clinicians. So we need to offer that validation, that empathy and assistance. In order for de-escalation to become effective, we need our veterans to feel heard or cared for first. That's how they can move on from a crisis. And statements of validation and empathy allow a patient to feel heard and understood. You know, I understand that you are frustrated with blank. I see that you're feeling blank. I am sorry that that happened to you. And you may be corrected, and that's totally okay. You know, this is all about them and what they are feeling. So if they correct you, there is nothing wrong with that. And then we also just want to show the statements of assistance, showing that care and concern. How can I help you with this? What can we do to make things better? What would help you feel safer? All of these are statements of assistance. And then we can also normalize the stress response. By normalizing our own stress response, we can help the people we serve understand theirs. So we want to also anticipate body sensations of the stress response. So this could be the tunnel vision, the hearing, could be diminished cognition, working memory, could be the shaky feeling or time distortion. So a lot of times if you're in a crisis situation and you're just thinking, well, they're not listening to me, it could be that they are having that tunnel hearing. They really can't hear you. They aren't able to listen well. Or they have that diminished cognition, that time distortion. Something that feels like 5 minutes could really be an hour, or something that's an hour could really only be 5 minutes. So they have those different things going on. And then we also need to understand the strong relationship between beliefs and emotions. So there's an absolute reason why we call emotions feelings or feelings emotions. We are feeling these emotions in our body first. So what we believe about these feelings and about these emotions absolutely plays a part in our behavior afterwards. And people typically have more control over their associated beliefs than the emotions that they are experiencing. And our goal here is to get our veteran to be able to tell the difference between responding and reacting. So, responding to their stress response, what is actually happening within their body, versus just reacting to it. And here is applied empathy. So this is what Brene Brown was talking about. These are the four parts of empathy. So first, we always need to stay out of judgment. Two, we would like to take another person's perspective. And then three, recognize their emotion. Four, communicate what you notice or recognize. Those are those statements of validation. So what are some empathy blockers? So these actions or beliefs always generally have good intentions, but almost inevitably backfire. So they're just good to stay away from when you're trying to practice empathy. So the first one-upping. So this is when a client is coming to you and they say, I only got a couple hours of sleep last night. I'm exhausted. And you just tell them right back, well, I didn't sleep at all. That right there is one-upping them, and that is not allowing them to feel heard or validated. It could be emotional educating. So this could turn into a very positive experience if you would just relax. Oh, you're just experiencing anxiety. Go read a book about it. It could be rescuing, just saying, let me do it for you. Could be storytelling. So that reminds me of my time in high school when I blah, blah, blah. So this is not a time about you. This is a time for our clients to feel heard. Empathy blockers, such as shutting down those emotions. So just cheer up, it'll be okay, calm down. Think about if someone has ever said calm down to you. When has that ever worked in actually calming you down? And then the sympathy. So just saying, oh, you poor thing, or bless your heart, that's not actually letting them feel heard either. And then correcting. So saying to our clients, that's not how it happened. Well, to them, that is absolutely their perceived reality. That is how it happened. So this is not a time for correcting them. And then those silver lining statements. So those at least statements. One that I like to point out is like, well, at least your family comes to visit you. Well, this person's family could be a big trigger for them. So by saying, well, at least they come to visit is not helping anything. So here's just a quick exercise in empathy. So think if this was your family member, someone close to you, or even you yourself. What type of staff would you like caring for you or your family member? What is their demeanor? What is their communication like? So go ahead and pause and just take a minute to think about this. And then providing alternatives. So in order for someone to stop a certain behavior, they usually need to have an alternative behavior to engage in. So this could be offering distractions or other ways to meet their expressed needs. And we could teach and reinforce those positive, healthy coping skills, such as journaling, listening to music, talking to someone, going for a walk, or even practicing deep breathing. So think about the box breathing that we just completed together. Something to note here is that when someone is in peak crisis phase, that is not the time to be teaching or reinforcing those positive, healthy coping skills. Again, they have that diminished cognition and they are struggling with their decision making. That is not the time to try to teach someone, oh, well, let's just do this instead. So it is absolutely critical to teach our veterans and our individuals these positive and healthy coping skills pre-crisis. That is when it is going to be very, very important. So here are just some miscellaneous tips. So self-care is very, very important. We need to make sure we are doing what we need to stay healthy physically, emotionally, mentally, socially, and spiritually. There is no way that we can continue to care and help others if we're not caring and helping ourselves. And then knowing what your triggers are, what behaviors your individuals may exhibit that affect you the most, knowing, am I actually going to be able to assist in this crisis situation? And then know when to pick your battles with the individuals in your care. Again, going to that empathy blocker of correcting. That is absolutely not a time to like fight with your individual. That will just add fuel to the fire, and that is not what we want. And that just leads into the fourth one there. So it's not about winning an argument. Having a patient admit if they're wrong, that is not what this is about. It is all about safety. And then just remembering that we do not all share the same reality. So again, what they perceive as correct is what their reality is, and acknowledging that can make all the difference. Here are just some general recommendations. So in addition to ensuring the scene is relatively safe for you to approach, the team should consider the following safety precautions. So provide extra space when approaching and don't get too close. Have multiple exits if applicable. Don't let the person get between you and the exit. Keep equipment and personnel clear in case a hasty exit becomes necessary. Do not swarm the patient with multiple team members. That can be very overwhelming. And always want to select one individual to engage while the others hang a few feet back. Here are just some strategies when working with trained forces specifically. So I'm just going to refer to this slide here. So when veterans experiencing PTSD symptoms are agitated and or in crisis situations, they are experiencing heightened activation of their natural fight or flight responses. So as always, our primary concern at that point is for personal client safety. That is always our number one concern. Because it helps their fight or flight response, veterans in crisis situations are particularly attuned to things going on in their immediate environment. If anything happens that is ambiguous, a veteran in crisis may default to a negative interpretation. So that example there, if another staff member arrives for support, a veteran in crisis may think they're here to gang up on me, even if the new staff is actually present to help ensure that safety. So just making sure that the others hang a few feet back and have that one individual who will really step up to help with our individual. And then military training focuses on the use of physical aggression as a tool in dangerous situations. However, because of this training and experience, veterans may also be in better control of their own use of aggression. So this gives intervention specialists an opportunity to team up with the veteran to reduce the need for physical tactics. So again, we always want to work with our client. And veterans with tactical military training are aware of most, if not all, of the tactics and techniques employed in a crisis situation. So working with them, how can we get you to never go into a crisis, or if it does happen, how can we avoid it in the future? And then we'll go into the threat assessment. So accurate prediction of a violent act remains virtually impossible. So there is no useful profile of the patient who will commit violence against others. Predictions that a patient will not be violent in a specific situation in time is most likely to be correct. Incidents of violence are rare compared to the number of patients being treated. And then efforts to make such predictions are typically based upon static characteristics of a possibly disruptive individual. This includes their gender, their age, it could be their history of violence. In the terms of veterans, it could be their military experience. What we really want to be focusing on is their dynamic factors. So, what is the individual's current mental or physical state? What are their current personal stressors or recent losses? What are their dynamic factors to actually help us determine whether there is a low, medium, or high level of threat happening? And then estimating the level of threat is not the same as making a prediction. So here are just some more. So dynamic factors associated with the disruptive individuals, the potential victim or victims in the context or situation are important in determining whether there is currently a low, medium, or high level of threat. And these dynamic factors include the subject's current mental health state, all of those that I mentioned. And estimating the level of threat, again, is not the same as making a prediction. So we always want to shift from prediction to risk assessment. So as providers that are relied on for crisis intervention, we need to first look at the lens that we are using to look at potential escalation and shift from a violence prediction model to a risk assessment model. So violent prediction assumes that dangerousness resides within the individual already, and that dangerousness is viewed as static or constant. And then furthermore, the violence prediction approach assumes that risk of violence is dichotomous. So it's either present or not. They're either violent or they won't be. And that is absolutely not what it is. So we need to shift into the threat assessment model, where our understanding of dangerousness depends on many interacting variables, which involves the subject, the target, and the setting. Those are those dynamic risk factors. And then dangerousness or risk of violence is viewed as dynamic and shifting. And then the risk of violence ranges along a continuum from low to high. So think of a sliding scale or any spectrum disorder. Like think of someone on the low side of the autism scale or schizophrenia, anything like that. And here are some general reminders. So we always want to have our best practice and patient-centered care to gather information from the disruptive client directly and or their family, of course, with consent when possible. We want to be open-minded and use non-judgmental language. We want to identify those static risk factors, so the gender, age, criminal record. So these are things that don't change or change very slowly. And then we want to identify the dynamic risk factors. So mood stability, substance use, financial situation, family support. These are things that may change with intervention or just may change on their own. And then leveraging existing care relationships is often an effective way to de-escalate. So having that rapport, having that connection, and behavioral threat assessment is a problem-solving process. So next, we're actually going to get into some staff nonverbal versus verbal communication. So how you are directly communicating verbally and nonverbally with your individuals. So we need to recognize your nonverbal cues. So how is your body language? Are your arms crossed? Is your foot tapping? What is your facial expression? Are you scowling or are you smiling? Are you presenting as being someone who can be approached? What is your touch like? A hand on someone's shoulder may be very comforting for one client, though may be very, very triggering for someone else. So you always have to be very careful when completing touch or haptic cues. And then our gestures, so finger pointing, we'll get into that a little bit, but this can be very scary or very just territorial, and we need to stay away from it. And then interpersonal spacing, so how close or far away we are from someone. And then where's our focus of attention? Is our focus of attention actually on our client, or is it on our phone, or is it on the TV? Where should we be paying attention? And here are the body language clusters. So we always want to compartmentalize the body into 3 zones. So there is the face, so up here, and then we have upper half and the lower half. So those are the 3 zones, and then there are hand gesture planes. And hands serve as a punctuation mark per se for body language. So hand gestures below the waistline are generally considered to be less trustworthy, and hand gestures above the shoulders is considered to be very exciting. So think about if you're at an amusement park and you're on a roller coaster, your hands are up, you're very excited. So that's just like a little example there. And then we always want to consider our veterans combat training when we're taking these body language clusters into consideration. So they're very important when our veterans are picking up on their environmental cues. And then here's our nonverbal de-escalation. So we want to use no weapon hands. So I will show that real quick. So our non-weapon hands are going to be in our midsection. So they're not excited, they're not below the waist. They are right in front of our individual. This is showing very directly we have no weapons and we are a safe person to approach or be around. So this is no weapon hands. We want to show them that they are safe. We want to avoid hand evasion and closed fists. So this could indicate that you were just ready to fight. We want to avoid that pointed finger. So if I'm talking at you like this is very demanding. It could be very accusatory, and we never want to do that to our clients. We want to maintain that safe distance. So we never want to get too close. So if someone is starting to escalate, especially about 4 to 6 feet is recommended. And then do not touch at all. Again, this could just be triggering for someone. And then this gives an escalated person permission to defend themselves or become physical in response. So we absolutely do not want to touch unless that imminent threat is present. And then sidestep. So quite literally just step to the side. If someone is advancing towards you, we can literally just move out of the way there. And avoiding those territorial gestures. Getting into a power struggle, again, only adds fuel to the fire. It is only escalating that situation more. And then our actions should match our language. If we're giving no weapon hands and verbally telling someone you're safe and we're going to keep things calm, and then all of a sudden they're in a restraint, our actions and what we are doing does not match our language. And then we want to use those encouraging cues. So nodding our heads and staying away from negative or punishing threats. We always want to encourage our clients, stay on the positives. And then also stay on the same level. So if they're sitting, sit with them. If they're standing, stand with them. We need to mirror their eye level. So what about verbal intervention? So very first and foremost, that very important one there. So effective communication in crisis is de-escalation. So we want to make efforts to describe and explain our actions by conveying respect, asking and giving information in a calming way. Same thing with directions that will distract and refocus behavior. And we just want to focus on our tone, cadence, and volume. So how is our tone? Are we formal or informal? Are we assertive or passive? And then our cadence, so our speech tempo is defined basically about how fast we talk. If we are talking very fast by trying to get someone to calm down, they are not likely to. They have that diminished cognition. We need to make sure that we're speaking in a way that our clients can actually understand. And then same thing with volume. If our volume keeps getting louder and louder, our client is likely to match that. And same thing with our getting quieter. If we get quieter, our clients are likely to match that. So consider just how many different messages could be sent with the word hello. So just like how I said it, hello, hello, hello. Like all of those, it's one word, but it could be said many different ways, and all of them can like give different messages. And then for more verbal intervention, we want to avoid the writing reflex. So de-escalation is all about timing. So timing is absolutely everything. If we are unable to de-escalate before someone reaches a certain point on their emotional thermometer, it's likely that they will further dysregulate. And then de-escalation utilizes already established rapport, not manipulation. We want to use support staff that are effective when working with the client. So we never want to bribe. And this rapport is achieved through using applied empathy over time. Remember, people don't care about what you know until they know that you care. So ask for and use the person's name whenever possible, and expect and when possible accommodate rather than react to strong emotional responses. Remember earlier, our goal is to help our veterans know when to respond, not react. So we should be doing the same. And then some more crisis de-escalation techniques. So first we have physical there. So we want to allow that personal space, remove other patients from the area, though make efforts not to be obvious. So I actually have been in a situation where someone started to escalate and we started removing patients from that common area. All of a sudden, it made them escalate more because they got upset. They started wondering, what do you think I'm going to do? Do you think I'm going to be violent? And it only made them more upset. Same thing with the potentially dangerous objects. So trying not to be obvious when removing anything from that environment. And then verbal, we want to maintain that calm, quiet voice and tone. We want to use a minimal amount of words. So making sure that they can actually understand what you're saying in that moment. We want to give statements of validation and support or clear direction, especially that validation when they actually do go through with that direction that you're trying to give them. And then just do not try to reason or immediately resolve any kind of issues. This is not the time to problem solve with the individual. It's the time to keep them safe. And then the positive responses from staff. So we always want to acknowledge the emotion. Again, validation is key. And then set limits or expectations. So letting an individual know that if they cross a certain or physical boundary, what consequences are to follow based upon company policy. It is absolutely okay to set boundaries with your clients. And then encourage a self-soothing skill like that box breathing and demonstrate how to use it. Having that mirroring, they might be able to mirror you. And then we want to remove the excess stimulus from the environment or just leave it all together. You know, ask them, is it okay if we go to a quiet area? And exactly that, just avoid telling others what to do. Sit down, don't do that. Come with me. We always want to ask to see, is it okay if we do this instead? And then sensible self-disclosure. So again, this is not about you. It can absolutely be helpful, especially with that applied empathy. But this requires being skillful to not divulge too much information, and just making sure that we are keeping this about the client. And then having that partial agreement. So be willing to negotiate or compromise in order to get to a partial agreement. Our goal is to ensure client safety, not to win. And then giving or requesting information. So we want to ask about the person's immediate concerns. So convey that you were there to help the situation and to keep the person safe. We want to encourage the person to answer a series of simple and direct questions to help focus their attention. And we would like to collect information in a way that is calming. For example, ask questions about the order of what happened in a structured way to help organize that person's thinking. And then use reflective, clarifying, or summarizing statements to communicate that you understand the person correctly. If you are corrected, that is totally okay. There is nothing wrong with that. We just want to make sure our clients are feeling heard. By all means, if talking about the situation just increases the distress in the person, ask unrelated questions that distracts the person from his or her reactions. You know, what else is going on? And then let the person know that in these circumstances, stress reactions, while they may be alarming, are understandable. Going back to normalizing that stress response. So giving directions. So we want to ensure that the person is moved to a safe location if warranted. And whenever possible, protect the person from unnecessary exposure to additional circumstances that could cause additional distress. So think about asking a client to go somewhere quiet, when in reality, that area is actually very loud. There's someone else who is yelling. That's not going to help by any means that other person calm down. And we want to provide direction that is clear and positive, oriented towards directing the person and what to do instead of what not to do. For example, instead of yelling, get out of the way, try, I need you to move over here so you don't get hurt. So doing those what to do's and what not to do. And then give the person something to do that distracts him or her. This could be lots of different things. Think about your individual and what they enjoy. If you do have to act firmly or abruptly, moderate the impact of that at your first opportunity. You would like to return to a calm tone, explaining the importance of compliance with your instructions and emphasizing that the person's safety and protection are your foremost concern. And then we always want to reinforce the compliance by promptly and positively acknowledging actions that follow your instructions. So making sure if the client does agree to go with you to a quiet area, thank them, say they're doing a great job, or if they're modeling breathing after you, again, tell them that they're doing good. So what are some boundaries? So we are going to go over common boundaries to be mindful of. However, please follow your facilities or your company's policies and procedures of what you can or cannot do. These are just common ones to be mindful of. So why do we have these boundaries in place? So many clients are easy to take advantage of, and it is our responsibility as their support staff to make sure that that doesn't happen. They are in our care. Staff who get too close physically, touch clients who don't want to be, or an increased risk for assault as people jump to defending themselves. And then staff that get too close physically or share too much personal information may be at an increased risk for pathological clients, risking using their loved ones or using that information against them. So this is not only to protect the client, but also to protect you guys as clinicians. And then our impression of the staff becomes our impression of the company as a whole. So what the staff are acting like, we kind of assume it for the whole company. So these are some personal boundaries. So employees are only to provide services for clients at the location identified in their ISP. So this is their individualized service plan. This could be their treatment plan, their care plan, whatever it might be called for your company. We only want to provide services at that location. And then personal and professional lives should remain separate. So we want to be mindful when disclosing personal information while in a professional setting. So our professional relationships. So employees should keep personal contact information to themselves, such as personal cell phone numbers, personal email addresses, social sites. This absolutely implies an equal relationship and implies that our client can reach us whenever through these personal methods. And that is not at all what we want to be showing to our clients. Instead, we should form mentoring relationships with individuals rather than acting as a friend. We also want to be mindful of how you talk to clients, not calling them baby, my love, sweetie, anything like that. We want to always make sure that we are calling them by their name and being respectful. And then visitors. So obviously, the amount of visitors that you get in a certain location is out of your control, but can just be important to note that you need to follow your company's policy on personal visitors during your shift. And then be mindful of clients seeing visitors and potentially asking questions or wanting to speak to an unknown guest. Think about your clients as well. If a lot of unknown people coming in and out is something that is triggering for them, and you notice that there's a lot of movement happening, maybe ask your client, hey, why don't we go to a less common area? Why don't we go back to your room for a little while to just avoid that potential trigger altogether? And then work at work. So during scheduled work time, employees are expected to devote all efforts to performing their job duties and responsibilities. Employees are to conduct personal business and or social activities while off the clock and away from clients. So this includes, but is not limited to, the personal use of cell phones. It could be the individual's phone, use of personal laptops, choosing activities that you would rather do rather than the individual served, anything like that. We want to make sure that when we are at work, we are devoting our time to the individual. And then along this same vein, we just want to be aware of our surroundings. So if we are not completing work at work, we may miss things that otherwise we could have prevented. So we always don't want to speak negatively about the company you work for or your job duties. This may make the client feel that they can't come to you for help when they need something. And then all issues and concerns should be brought to the attention of the appropriate management personnel or human resources. Speaking poorly about other staff members to a client may result in that client not liking that other staff member. And that is something that we absolutely want to avoid. If discussing personal matters at work with a coworker, just be mindful to do so in break rooms or behind closed doors, anywhere clients are not able to hear that conversation. And then outside of work, so employees are to have contact with individuals served only during their scheduled hours of work. So again, when you give someone your personal contact information, that is giving them permission to contact you outside of your hours of work, and we do not want that. And then employees are prohibited from lending or borrowing any money or personal property to or from the individual served. So no employee should ever ask an individual served for gas money to take them on outings, refuse to take an individual on an outing because they do not have gas money, anything like that. And then borrowing or giving money or having clients work for you just opens up a lot of vulnerability. And then buying items for clients can do the same. So if a client gives you $10 to go pick them up a couple grocery items, and then the next day they're saying, "Oh, you stole my money. What did you do?" That can lead to a whole bunch of trouble. A lot of times there will be a designated staff member who does those things. So please refer the individual to that designated staff member or refer back to your supervisor if you are unsure of what to do. And then pictures and social media. So unless policy states otherwise, employees are not permitted to photograph, videotape, or record any meeting or individual served, or make a copy of any document related to the individual served. So this includes social media. So you have photos of friends because they have significance to you. You take photos of family for the same reason. Neither should apply to your clients. And employees are not to have any social media involvements with your clients. Again, social media is about your personal life, and clients should not have access to that. No gift giving or receiving. So although gift giving is a traditional way to show goodwill and celebrate special occasions, it can create future problems. So approval from supervisors is required for employees to accept or give gifts to individuals served or their family members. Again, so think about Christmas. It is very common for there to be a designated member of staff to get gifts or give gifts to our individual served for the special occasions, birthdays, holidays, whatever it may be. So please refer to that designated staff member or refer to your supervisor when it comes to any gift giving or receiving. And then appropriate physical. So what is appropriate physical contact? So physical contact that may result as a product of assisting with personal care or hygiene, medication administration, behavior support, or other identified needs should be addressed in the individual's plan. If you are touching an individual, there should be a reason why. And best practice is to keep physical boundaries at a distance and keep professional. So things like handshakes, fist bumps, elbows, things like that. As always, become familiar with your company policies on physical contact with clients. Generally speaking, it is only in response to an imminent threat. And then some more physical contact. So what are some examples of inappropriate physical contact? So these could be the full body hugs, could be kissing, touching of the genital or chest areas, tickling, piggyback rides, wrestling. I've heard it all. It could be isolating someone in an individual, in a closet or a hallway. It could be a sleeping area or a bathroom. We absolutely do not want to isolate our clients like that. we do not want to touch the underwear of residents unless during the course of assisting with laundry or putting clothes away, any type of massage, and just in general, any physical contact that makes an individual uncomfortable. Again, think back to earlier, having a hand on someone's shoulder. That could be comforting to one person and triggering to someone else. So if you are licensed, please become familiar with your agency's policy on reporting guidelines and state mandated reporting guidelines, and also follow the code of ethics of your particular discipline. So next we just have a couple case studies here. So a little bit of context. This will be in a residential setting or a dining room. And we have Greg and Michael. So Greg and Michael are eating lunch together. Greg is a season ticket holder and a huge fan of the Wheeling Nailers, and he is going to a game tonight. Greg is very excited and is telling Michael about it as they are having lunch. Greg wants to show Michael his season pass, but when he reaches for his wallet, it's not in his pocket. Greg tends to get agitated quickly when things are not always in the right place, but more so when it comes to his personal belongings, especially his wallet. Excuse me. Greg jumps up from his seat at the table quickly, already excited because his wallet isn't in his pocket. When he jumps up, he hits the table, and his glass of milk spilled into Michael's plate and all over his lunch. So we will look at this first part here. So staff Stacy immediately tells Greg, calm down, it's probably in your room, we'll look for it after lunch, sit back down and eat. And Stacy starts to clean up the table. Greg is already running to his room to look, and then Stacy asks Lori to go see what Greg is doing. When staff Lori looks in his door, Greg is frantically opening drawers, throwing clothes around, he's muttering, he's mumbling. Though staff Lori returns to the dining room, telling her coworker that he's just looking through his stuff for his wallet, no big deal. So within minutes, they begin hearing things breaking, seeing things flying from Greg's room. Greg is now in a full-blown crisis. So he has broken his pictures and his radio, as well as his dresser drawers. When staff tried to intervene, he became aggressive towards them, which caused a code to be called for assistance. So obviously not at all what we want. I'm going to go ahead and have you guys pause here for a moment and either list or think about what went wrong here. So I will give you guys just one moment. So it starts at the beginning, right? So staff Stacy immediately is bringing in those empathy blockers that we learned about earlier and shutting down his emotions, calm down. It's probably in your room. We'll look for it after lunch. And then she's telling him what to do. Just sit back down and eat. However, Greg is very upset. So Greg is running by himself and Stacy just continues to do her own thing. Lori goes to check on Greg, and Lori also isn't paying attention to those escalation cues. Lori comes back saying no big deal is happening at all, and they continue to leave Greg unattended. At this point, Greg continues to escalate. He still can't find his wallet, and all of a sudden, he is in a crisis due to all of those missed cues or missed opportunities for de-escalation. Not at all what we want. So here's a better version. Staff Stacy tells Greg, it's okay. Can we take a second and let me try to help you think of where you may have left it last? Greg agrees, although he is still distraught. Stacy asks staff Lori if she can help Michael get a fresh plate for lunch while she helps Greg. Greg and Stacy go to his room, and as they go, Stacy is telling him how she can understand how he feels. She's lost her wallet before, and it was terrible. She speaks with calm tones and expresses her concerns with empathy. Greg soon responded in kind, his voice lowering, he seemed to be calming, and Stacy asked Greg if he could remember the last time he saw his wallet, maybe when he woke up and was getting dressed. At first, Greg was still discouraged, not remembering where he'd seen it last. Though looking around his room, he noticed his laundry hamper. Then he remembered. He had left it in his pants pocket the night before when he put his pajamas on. The wallet was found, Greg was happy, and they returned to the dining room for lunch. So again, I will just pause here a moment to give you a second to list or just think about, what went right here. So right at the beginning, Staff Stacy is immediately starting to validate Greg there. It's okay. And then giving those statements of care. Can we take a second and let me try to help you think of where you may have left it last. So immediately Staff Stacy is trying to do a better job of paying attention to those cues. And then Stacy and Greg go to his room together. Stacy is not leaving Greg unattended and not ignoring Greg regarding this situation. Stacy is using the sensible self-disclosure there by saying that she's lost her wallet before. It was horrible. She's using that empathy. And then as we keep going, Stacy asked Greg if he could remember. At first, Greg was still discouraged, but looking around his room, since he had someone else there with him to help him think of clearly, he remembered where it was, and they were able to return appropriately. So next we have another scenario here. So Christy is a 42-year-old woman who has been diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. Christy has explosive violent outbursts when she becomes upset or agitated. She has had previous suicide attempts, which required hospitalization. Regular staff are assigned to work with Christy due to her disorder. And having staff who can recognize the antecedents or the triggers leading up to those outbursts and know how to respond is a crucial part of teaching Christy coping skills to alleviate them. Christy is under suicide precautions due to threats of harming herself the previous day. The facility psychologist, Melissa, is the one responsible for either continuing or discontinuing the suicide precautions. Christy begins insisting the staff working with her calls Melissa because she wants to go on an outing scheduled for later in the day today. So we will look at scenario 1. So staff Jody tells Christy, "You knew what was going to happen when you said you were going to hurt yourself. You should have thought about that yesterday." Christy began to escalate, beginning to shove chairs around, pushing tables, raising her voice now, demanding staff call the psychologist. Staff Rachel, when returning from break, asks her coworker what's going on. Jody tells her directly in front of Christy that Christy was regretting crying wolf the day before. Now she's mad because she doesn't get to go out on the trip tonight. Rachel will then start talking to Christy about the coping skills she was supposed to be using, asking her to practice them now. Chrissy, however, doesn't hear anything by this time. She is fully in crisis. She is hitting staff, hitting her own head off the tables and walls several times before staff can get assistance and gain some sort of control of the situation. So go ahead and pause and list or think of what went wrong here. So right at the beginning, Jody is immediately invalidating Christy and, if anything, starting an argument here. You knew what was going to happen. You should have thought about it yesterday. And then moving on, Christy beginning to escalate and Jody isn't doing anything. Rachel returns from her break, asks her what's going on, and Jody continues to fuel that situation worse by saying Christy was regretting crying wolf the day before, and now she's mad. So still arguing, still trying to make the situation worse for Christy. And then Rachel wasn't helping this situation either. So Rachel is like talking about coping skills, even though Christy is in the middle of a crisis, asking Christy to use her coping skills now. However, Christy isn't thinking of anything at that point. She is fully in crisis. So here's our second scenario. So staff Jody recognizes the tone and nature of Christy's request from previous incidents, and Jody begins to talk to Christy in a normal, calm tone, asking how she is feeling today about the progress she made from yesterday to today. Jody expressed her understanding of Christy's frustration about not being able to go out later, and Christy is still using a loud voice, but has stopped yelling. Her posture and stance is becoming more relaxed and appears less defensive, dropping her arms to her sides. Jody continues talking to assure Christy that she does hear her, and although there is nothing that can be done about today's trip, by keeping herself safe and continuing to utilize the coping skills like deep breathing or mindfulness exercises when she feels herself getting upset or feels triggered again, this will allow her to plan other outings or trips she may like when she is able to. So just pause for a moment and either list or think about what went right. So what went right here? Very much at the beginning. So Jody is already recognizing Christy's cues. She has that rapport built. And Jody is beginning to talk to Christy in that normal and calm tone. Jody is asking how she's feeling today versus yesterday. She's assessing those dynamic factors. What is her mental state? And even though Christy is still using a loud voice, that is allowing her to de-escalate somewhat. Christy and Jody continue talking, and Jody continues to use empathy and use that validation, saying, I'm hearing you. I understand that that's frustrating. And then as they continue, they can keep utilizing coping skills at another point to make sure that she can go on outings at another time. So if you do have any questions, please feel free to reach out to your ViaQuest representative. Feel free to reach out to me, and hopefully we will be able to answer any questions that you do have. And here is just a quick QR code. So we are always trying to improve our trainings. We love getting feedback on what we can do better. So please scan the QR code or use the link below to tell us how we did. That is all for today's training. So thank you all very much and have a great day.